Hi everyone, my name is Stina and I'm with Beef Advocacy Canada. We're here today at Butters Ranching. We're west of Cochrane, Alberta, and as you can see, the landscape's pretty gorgeous out here. We've just finished feeding a herd of cows with some round bales. We're going to talk to rancher Eric Butters in a minute here about what he's feeding and why he's feeding it, but it's really important to make sure that cattle get extra feed in the winter, and especially now these girls are going to have their calves here pretty soon, so they're going to need some extra energy. So I just wanted to talk to you guys really quickly about Beef Advocacy Canada. We're an organization that seeks to do twofold. We look to provide information for producers who want to advocate for the industry and talk about what they're doing, and also to provide consumers with a platform to learn about beef and ask questions and find out how their beef is raised. So we're gonna switch over here. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing from me. The one last thing I'll tell you is please share this post with your friends and comment online both on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook with the hashtag CDNAgDay. So we're gonna go to our rancher here, Eric. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
So can you tell us a little bit about your operation, about what you've got going on out here and what type of cattle and things like that?
Well, we're a cow-calf operation. We're in the high foothills, so we can't grow grain. So we have one choice if we're going to be in agriculture, and that's running cows. And so we run predominantly Red Angus, Gelbvieh cross cows with a little smattering of other crossbreeding happening. We will be calving in about another month. The calves stay with their mothers until early November when they're weaned, and off to a feedlot for the steers go off to feedlot for fattening. We select our replacement heifers and bring them back to breed to add to the herd.
Great. And how long have you been in the business?
Oh, about 40 some years, I guess.
Yeah, so pretty long.
We've got 5th generation now on the same ranch.
That's pretty much the definition of sustainability right there, hey?
That's the only way you can afford it.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you enjoy about being a rancher?
Well, I enjoy being out in the landscape. Look around. It's a nice place to be. I enjoy working with livestock. I enjoy being out in the fresh air, being relatively active and doing stuff.
And what would you say the hardest part of your job is?
Well, I suppose the worst part is bad weather in calving time. Spring snowstorm in April is caused a lot of grief and a lot of extra long hours day and night. But we can get some cold springs, some wet springs, and some dry springs. But by and large, the snowstorms don't last too long. So you just deal with it.
So what would you say? That doesn't sound like a very good scenario. What keeps you going when things are tough like that?
Well, I don't know. It's just something I always wanted to do, and I'm happy to still be doing it. We're going into calving time, and these cows are all preg checked, and they'll all be calving in the spring. And this whole birth renewal thing just is a source of wonder to me. I still don't get how it works, but it works, and so it's always an exciting time to see the new calves coming, see how the breeding program is appearing to work out and whatnot.
That's great. So we have 10 people currently joined. We're just going to say hi to a couple of them. So we have Stacy and Emily, and a couple of pages. I think the Beef Cattle or the Canadian Beef Checkoff Agency has joined us now, which is great. So up to 10 viewers. So why don't we take a look here at what you're feeding, and you can tell us a little bit about nutrition and why it's important to feed cattle extra when they're calving and in the winter.
Well, of course, feed supplies vary in quality, so typically we would feed the poorer quality early in the winter. Right now we're kind of into the mid-quality feed, and we'll feed the best quality feed in last half of March and April. And this is a mixture of oat and barley green feed, we call it. The Americans call it oat hay or barley hay. It's grained in it's a plant that would grow barley and oats, but if it's harvested a little younger, a little less mature and still green, it makes good cattle feed. So that's what they're getting today.
Great. We don't have any questions from our viewers yet, so why don't we just, we'll take a little walk around here, look at some of the landscape, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your breeding program? You mentioned you have Red Angus and Gelbvieh crosses. What made you choose those breeds?
Well, I'm a great believer in crossbreeding. I don't think a commercial outfit wants to have straight bred anything. I think we should have crossbred cattle. The Angus, in this case Red Red Angus are fairly hardy, fairly good mothers. They can survive in in a high foothill landscape pretty well. At the same time, we want to have some crossbreeding to give a little extra growth and size to them. So we are currently using quite a few Gelbvieh bulls on the Red Angus females to get the impact of crossbreeding. And the same feedlot has bought my steers now for 28 consecutive years, and his comments are, he's all for crossbreeding. So when the customer's all for crossbreeding, I'm all for crossbreeding.
That's great. So some of our viewers, we have a bit of a mix. So I see that Brianna Anderson has just shared our video. Thanks, Brianna. We're up to 16 viewers now, which is pretty exciting. And some of them, we have different backgrounds. We have some ag backgrounds. We have some consumer backgrounds. So why don't you explain a little bit? They might not understand the cattle cycle the same way. So why don't you explain what happens? These cows are going to have their calves here in a couple of weeks, and then what happens from there?
Well, that's right. They'll be calving soon, and we'll be keeping track of them, of course, pretty closely. They'll go on pasture. We do some rotational grazing with the use of hot wire and whatnot over the summer. The bulls will go out third week of June usually, start the process all over again. They go into the higher hills for a couple of 3 months in the summer. They'll come back in the fall. We'll cut the calves away from their mothers in early November typically, and sell the steers, go calm down my banker, keep the heifers, and then we'll select replacements, because of course not all of the cows will stay in herd forever. Some of them are getting old, or they have bad feed or bad udders or whatever, have to be culled, and they'll be replaced by the new crop of females coming up.
That's great. So we have a question from one of our viewers, Tracy Herbert, who I happen to know is in Saskatchewan. Hey, Tracy. And she asked, Eric, what's something you're most proud about your operation or of the beef industry?
Well, what I'm personally most proud of is that was my, we're doing the same thing that my grandparents and parents did, and my daughters and families are taking up the business. So I'm very happy about that. The other thing, I guess, would be to be in a very sustainable, I think we're in a very sustainable production system. We graze grasses that can't be consumed by humans. So we take a product that people can't eat and we convert it into what I think is the premier food product in the world, which is beef.
That's great. We also have a couple new viewers joining us. Hi, Rob. Hi, Brandon. Thanks for tuning in, and please share your questions and continue to share the video. We're just going to walk around here, I think, a little bit and see what's going on. Oh. Obviously, these cattle aren't used to big groups of people and probably not selfie sticks, so we're just going to, keep things quiet and make sure we don't scare them while they're eating. Maybe widen out a little bit here. That's another important thing when you're handling livestock, is to not get in their
personal space a little bit there.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what the land that this operation is on, kind of how much you have and what it's like and what the conditions are.
Well, it kind of depends what you count. We've got a nucleus of private land here, 1,000 acres or so in the center of this valley, and then we've got grazing lease on 3 sides, and then we've got a forestry grazing permit over to the west over that ridge where they spend 3 months in the summer. So that's the land base we have, along with quite a bit of land rented from private individuals around. A lot of people come out, buy a quarter section, keep a horse or two, have some surplus grass, so I'm happy to help them manage their surplus grass.
That's great. So, you mentioned that most of your production cycle is based on grasslands. How do you manage that? That's obviously providing nutrition that your cattle need, but when you are feeding, is it just hay then?
Hay and green feed is what we feed over the winter. Of course, the poorest quality to start the winter and the best quality towards spring. We have some tame grass here, some land that's been cultivated and had tame grass such as brome and alfalfa planted to it. We tend to hot wire those pieces off with electric fence and then graze that mostly in June, and thereby we're able to protect the native grass, because the native grass is more vulnerable in June, and at the same time has a higher quality in the fall than the tame grass does. It retains its nutritive qualities later into the season. So we tend to do some rotational grazing through June and some of July, and then we go into the hills after that, and then most of the native grass is saved for fall and early winter grazing.
So obviously, you know, grass conservation then is pretty important. Can you tell us a little bit about the role that your operation plays in doing that and why you do it?
Well, yeah, we do that. We want to have a reasonably light footprint if we can. This system is sustainable and can be sustainable for thousands of years, and the bison herds in Western Canada prove that. We have to be careful not to impact that too severely. So, of course, the land that's been cultivated has been severely impacted by the fact it was cultivated. So we graze that with species of grass that are nutritious and grow well in June and July, and then and save the native grass for later on. And of course, we hot wire off a lot of the natural streams as well to keep the cattle away from them, and we either pump water to them or haul water to them, depending what pasture they're in, what time of year it is.
Great. So we have a question from a viewer, Brandon Bullum, and he said, in what areas of your operation have you been attempting to cut costs or save time?
Well, the first highest cost that we have, and probably most cow-calf operations have, is feed, winter feeding. We have this long winter, relatively long compared to a lot of grazing or a lot of ranching places in the world. So what we try to do is extend the grazing season as best we can, again by how we manage the grass. And if we can hold it on this particular landscape, we can usually get away with 120 to 140 days a year feeding. Some people in other landscapes can do better, and some not so lucky if they're in a deep snowfall area. So that would be the first cost. The first thing we try to do, we try to keep machinery costs to a minimum. We used to grow a bit of our own feed here, 300-400 tons a year. The machinery costs just got so outrageous that for that volume of feed we couldn't justify the cost of machinery. So now we buy all our feed and have it trucked in. And so we don't have to make payments on a baler and a hay bine and all the rest of it. So, and of course labor is a big cost, and that's why the family operations tend to survive, although most family operations now pay their family members fairly well, I think, and I hope and think that I do. But the next generation is taking over this operation, has worked into it the last couple of years, and will continue to work into it. So, we do what we can to control costs.
That's great. We might have a couple of people that are still joining us. I'm just going to do my little spiel again before we get going. And so hi again. Happy Canada's Ag Day. We're really excited that agriculture for more than ever decided to put on this event. For those of you who are just tuning in, we're here west of Cochrane at Butters Ranching, and we've just finished feeding some cattle this morning. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to my helper here, Ms. Kaylee. She's with Ag for Life, and they were happy enough to join us this morning to kind of give some support. So we're going to cut to Eric again here. He's probably a lot more fun to talk to. And we have another question from a viewer, Emily. What are some of the challenges you see facing the industry in the near future, Eric?
Well, of course, since the start of the cattle industry in Western Canada, we've been subject to this supply price cycles, and we went through a couple of very good years, largely as a result of the massive drought in parts of the U.S., including Texas. Texas runs more cows than all of Canada. They depleted the herd severely, shorted the market, the prices went up. We had a couple of very good years. Now they're rebuilding the herds. We're rebuilding our herds after BSE to some extent, not as fast as Americans are, but so we need to be ready and prepared for the inevitable ups and downs. And in the 2 or 3 good years, we needed to pay off any debt, to make improvements that we need to make. And then as we get into the troughs of the cycle, of the price cycle, we need to just batten down the hatches and hang on.
So that's, obviously agriculture and ranching, it sounds like a bit of a high risk market. What are some of the factors that make that you can't control that make things difficult for you?
Well, of course, we're on a North American market. Basically our price for beef is U.S. price minus freight. So we have to keep a close attention to the what's going on in the States, and the BAC thing was a big example of that. When the borders closed and we couldn't sell to the States or anywhere else in the world for a period of time, it was devastating for the industry. So there's the international trade part of it, and of course we sell beef through the efforts of our organizations to 100 and some countries now, I think, around the world. The other thing, of course, is exchange rate. A few years ago, Canadian dollar was worth $1.10 US, and I think we sold steer calves for 84 cents that year. That was a tough thing to get through. Right now, with 76-cent dollar, it works to our advantage as it does for any exporting organization.
That's great. So we're looking around here, we're panning around your farm, and or at least a small corner of it. If you guys didn't hear before, Eric was talking about how they have a kind of central private land, and then supplement that with lease land, which is what a lot of ranchers out here do. But how many? So this is your cow herd here, Eric. How many cows do you have?
We're wintering about 230 pregnant cows this winter.
Okay. So they are expecting around 200 calves or so?
Yeah, they're all preg-check pregnant, so we should have a similar number of calves, and we'll be starting the season anew.
So what are some of the, for our viewers that don't know, what are some of the, I guess, risks that are involved, with new calves? What could maybe hurt their development or possibly even keep them from surviving?
Well, bad weather in the spring would probably be, for us, our biggest risk. If it's snowing and cold, they require a lot of extra bedding. Fortunately, we're in this hill country where we can get them out of the wind. So that's a big help. We had 2 or 3 weeks this winter of very cold weather, minus 30 weather, and people say, how do your cows survive that? I said, all you have to do is fill them full of hay and keep them out of the wind, and they're happy. And people from central Canada and eastern Canada, where they've been having some bad weather, have to house them and have to have them under a roof because of the wet and cold. We're here, basically, as long as they're full of hay and can get out of the wind, they're fine.
That's great. So we have another question from Tracy. Thanks for being so vocal, Tracy. And she said, what is a common misconception about beef or ranching that you wish the public better understood?
Well, yeah, there's, we require large areas of land to run the cattle on because we don't want to have too heavy a hoof print or a footprint on the landscape, so it takes a lot of land to run cattle, and a lot of the land around here is public land, or crown land is the term I prefer. The Americans use public, we use the term crown, and it's subjected to a lot of other users, and we can certainly accommodate a lot of other users, providing there's some rules that are observed.
So you would say kind of the use of land and the protection of land is something?
Yeah, the use of the land base, the opportunity to use it, and of course, we're always battling the perceptions that some people might have about the healthfulness of the product and whatnot. And typically, the more science gets into it, the more we find out our product is right up there at the top.
Yeah, for sure. So we have another couple of viewers that have joined us. Hi, Russell. I know for a fact that Russell's cattle are a little different color than these ones, but hopefully he's enjoying the broadcast. So the one thing, we're looking here and it's beautiful. We've got the sun shining over the hills. What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, it all depends on the time of the year. Everything's so cyclical. We're just approaching the sort of slack time of the year, sort of December till the middle of March, where there's not a lot of daylight and there's not a whole lot to do except feed the cattle and look after things. Once we get into calving time, of course, the day starts pretty early and goes pretty late, 7 days a week. And then once we get into May and June, there's lots of fence to put up, to fix. We're in this high foothill country that has a lot of timberland and whatnot, so we have 60 miles of fence to maintain, and frankly, most years we have to maintain it twice, spring and fall, because trees blow over the fence, or wildlife runs through it or what may have happened. So we keep busy just looking after cattle and keeping them where we want them to be over the summer, keeping track of the bulls, of course, in breeding season, making sure that they're all healthy and active, and then of course we get into fall. It's get the cattle gathered up from hither and yon and into a place where we can get them corralled and get the calves weaned and get the marketing done.
That's great. Well, I'd like to open it up. We'd really love some more questions if any of our viewers have them. I guess at that point, you know, so we drove up here in Eric's bale truck, and I think we're heading back the same way. So we'll see what else is going on here, and then we'll head back to the main ranch. Eric, what else? So, you know, we rolled out some bales this morning. What else would you be doing on a day like today?
Well, there's 2 or 3 other bunches of cattle to feed. I haven't been to the bulls yet this morning. Feed them and check them out. And I've got to replace the salt and mineral tubs, fill them up. This time of year, the mineral supplement, vitamin supplement becomes more critical. So just the usual stuff that you get into.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously you said, so you have these cows here, and then and you'll also have, you know, you have to go feed your bulls. They're kept separately?
Yes, the bulls are in a separate field, and the heifers that are about to have their first calf and the ones that are about to have their second calf are wintered in a separate field, so they don't have to compete with these bigger, older cows for feed. So they're in a different field where they are a little better off over the winter.
Yeah, no, that sounds like it's important, and you know, to get that out. So Taylor has shared our video, and we're up to 18 viewers right now. So thanks everyone for tuning in. If that's all we've got, Eric, we'll keep streaming, but we'll hop in the truck and head back.
Okay, well, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Great. Oh, hold on there. We have another question. How does your animal care methods as the weather change as the weather gets colder? For instance, if a blizzard were to hit. So thanks for the question, Emily.
Well, in times of bad weather, it's important just to give them lots of feed. When they digest food, when they digest roughage, forages like this, it generates a lot of heat internally. The cows have a winter coat, just like people's cats and dogs get, and they're very well insulated. When you go out in the country and see cows with snow on their back, don't think they're cold, because that snow indicates the heat's not losing. If they were losing the heat through their back, the snow would have melted. So a cow is a pretty durable animal, and as long as they've got plenty to eat and can get out of the wind. If it's really cold, the wind can be hard on them, but if they can get lots to eat and get out of the wind, they're fine.
That's great. Okay, well, we'll start walking back. We're going to keep a bit of a wide berth so these gals don't get too scared of us, but I want you guys to take a look and see what we're up against. And this is a working ranch that looks like this every day of the year. So you're lucky enough to live here, Eric, and it's pretty picturesque country.
Thank you.
Alright, so we're going to flip back to this mode and tuck in a little bit. We are still live, so feel free to share your questions, but here's the bale truck that we're hopping in right now, and we're going to head back to the main ranch. Pretty common mode of transportation around here, would you say?
Yeah, the round bales are a real technological improvement over what we used to do, but you have to have some specialized equipment to feed them.
So you explain a little bit, you know, we're in kind of a base truck, and if you guys look out the window here, look through the back, you can see there's a flatbed with kind of 2 arms that fold out. Why don't you explain to us what that does and how you feed your round bales?
Well, the hydraulically operated. You just let the arms back down, pinch a bale, set it on the deck, pinch a second bale, put it up on the deck, drive to where the cows are, and then set the bale down, cut the strings, and roll it along. So it is really labor saving compared to the old days when we used to throw square bales on the back of a truck or a wagon or whatever, and drive out in the field and then cut the strings individually and push the bales over the edge. This is a huge improvement over what we used to do.
So you said the ranch has been in your family for 5 generations?
Yeah, 5th generation's here now, and that's in my grandkids who are 11 and 13. They would be the 5th generation.
That's great.
The big thing, there's lots of ranches way older than this one. My mother's father, my grandfather, homesteaded his property here in 1936, and most of the good land in Western Canada was homesteaded long before the 30s. The reason that this land was available is because my grandparents came along a little late, and this was all that was left. Nobody wanted it. But they learned, and we've learned how to adapt to the environment and the surroundings, and how to make a reasonably productive ranch out of it.
That's a really good point, adapting to the surroundings. Why don't you tell us one thing that you would say is an adaptation that you've had to adjust to living out here and ranching out here?
Well, we're high. Right now we're probably at about 4,600 feet in elevation. We have a short growing season. The native grasses that evolved here since the last ice age adapted to the surroundings. We should take the clue from that. You need to adapt to the surroundings, not try and change them. And so, for our little segment of the agriculture industry, we try to take advantage of the situation that's here, but at the same time not to overuse it or abuse it, because if you lose it, it's a long time recovery.
So we have another question from Kate. She said, if you haven't already said, I'd love to hear about the kind of wildlife that Eric has on his ranch and how they coexist with the cattle. So yeah, I mean, we're pretty close to the mountains up here. I'm sure there's a lot of wildlife.
Well, there is. The sort of ungulates, white-tailed deer and mule deer are here in abundance. Elk sometimes are as well. There's a herd of about 150 just down the road about 4 miles, and they like it down there, and I'm very happy that they like it down there and not here. We have, I've had a grizzly bear on my lawn. We occasionally have livestock losses to grizzly bears or wolves, but recent years this hasn't been that severe. It's another thing of sort of trying to figure out how to live with that. By going back into the high hills and the forestry for the summer, we used to go in the middle, which is the earliest date that you're allowed to enter. Now we don't enter till late July, and it's reduced our losses considerably. So there's certain things, but yes, that's part of the pleasure of living here. I just heard the owls start to hoot last night, first time this year. We do. The creek down here, there's usually blue herons around. There's been a pair of sandhill cranes nesting here the last few years, so it's kind of fun to watch them. And you're right, there's a lot of wildlife up here, especially up here in the foothills, and it's kind of part of what makes it fun.
That's great. We have 23 viewers, so thanks everyone for tuning in. We're really happy to be out here with Eric celebrating Canada's National Agriculture Day and showing everyone a little piece of what ranching is like out here in Alberta. So thanks for everyone that's tuned in, that's shared the video. We'll hang around for a couple more seconds here and just kind of watch our drive back here. And then this afternoon we'll actually be live again. We're going to be a slightly different part of the province near Airdrie, Alberta, where we'll be joined by Dr. Cody Creelman, who is a veterinarian, a bovine veterinarian. Bovine means cattle, for those of you that don't know. And we're going to ride around with him and see some of what he's doing. Looks like we're going to be meeting a neighbor or a friend or possibly some family members up here, so maybe we'll take this opportunity to sign off if there are no more questions. Please share the video. Please feel free to ask questions. We'll still be answering even though we're stopping the live broadcast for right now. And thanks again for tuning in. Follow our page, Beef Advocacy Canada, and like us on Twitter, which is @Beef Advocacy. And happy Canada's Ag Day, everyone.